Good evening, everyone. I just want to make sure you're able to hear me. If you can confirm that you're able to hear me. Good evening, everyone. Yes. Tony, good evening. Yeah, I'm just waiting for your reply. Yes, great, great, Hari. Hi, everyone. We're just about to start. We have a few minutes to finalize our live broadcast connection. Also, please feel free to introduce yourself, write down where you came from tonight, and prepare your questions. Today we speak about technologies for tech startup and product development, everything regarding building your MVP, prototype, any your tech product. So feel free to prepare the questions, and we're just about to start in few minutes. We are making the final preparations for the live broadcast. So again, one more time, please write down where you came from tonight. Any introductions, feel free to send your LinkedIn profile, introduce yourself in chat. So we just about to start shortly. All right, we are ready to start. Good evening, everyone. Just one more time. Today we have a special workshop, technologies and product development for a tech startup. Everything from starting from idea up to MVP, prototype building, and building a product for your tech startup. So please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you came from, your country, your city. Please feel free to send your LinkedIn profile to share with our audience, and also prepare your questions. Today we have our special experts. Hi, John. Nice to see you from Dublin. Yes, today we have special invited guests and experts. Happy to answer the questions about tech side of building a product. So nice, Steve from Seattle, United States. So one more time, today we speak about technologies and product development for a tech startup. Please prepare any questions related to tech side of building your product or prototype or MVP. Few points about our social media. We have a live broadcast now on YouTube channel. Also, we have Instagram, Twitter, special community WhatsApp group where you can network with our club community members, a LinkedIn group, Facebook group, and email. So please feel free to contact us and reach us out. Also, just a quick information about upcoming events, because it's quite important. On 28th of May, we have the biggest online live broadcast event, investment pitch day of our accelerator program. So anyone interested to come and network with investors from all across Europe and the world, please join us on 28th of May. Tickets on eligent.club. It's going to be a live broadcast investment pitch session where you can see pitches of startups joined our Eligent Accelerator program. Plus, you can network with investors looking for great projects and startups to invest. So you're more than welcome to join us. Moreover, if you're just about to get some good startup idea, or if you're looking for a co-founder, please join Eligent Startup Weekends on 28 June, 6 p.m. online. Tickets on eligent.club. So it's a weekend where you can meet co-founders, where you can get a good startup idea and also build your startup projects in a weekend. And agenda for tonight. So if today we speak about product development, MVP development, technologies relevant for it. So if you can check it out. So we speak about how to organize tech development process, how to build a website or app for your startup, how to organize your proper tech infrastructure. We speak about multi-platform web development, best applications for UX, prototyping, also frameworks and programming languages for building your web apps or mobile apps, and also where to store your data, some kind of the methods where to store your apps and your products, how to make sure it's the right solution and how to save money on it, and also a Q&A session. So feel free to please prepare your question right now. In the meantime, please feel free to chat in your question in this window. And promise we will reply all your answers regarding building a tech startup or product. So yes, and let me introduce myself. My name is Slav Baranovsky. I'm serial entrepreneur, founder of Eligent Club and Accelerator, and entrepreneur in residence of Brunel University London, international speaker and mentor, and HALT Founders Lab of International HALT Business School, London. You can find me on social media, or you can Google and find me on LinkedIn as well. So feel free to connect me and feel free to reach me out after our session. And Eligent Club is a community of tech entrepreneurs in the UK and also across Europe, aiming to help upcoming entrepreneurs to build the projects and tech products. And via community, we run multiple of events and activities in order to help you, to provide mentorship, guidance, and more opportunities to build your product, find a business partner, investor, co-founder, anyone you're looking for. So check out our website, eligent.club. You're more than welcome to join us, and we are very friendly community, and we are more than happy to see new members on board. So yes, as I mentioned before, we have a special guest today, and I think please feel free to text who just about to build your text product, or who just about to start building MVP or prototype, just for me to understand how many of you just about to do it, or maybe you already developed something. Can you share, please, what's your stage of your startup, or just an idea, or you're already building something? So please. And in the meantime, let me introduce our special guest today, Evgeny Galiota. He is a software engineer at Vida Tech, a startup mentor, and he is a mentor of Eligent Accelerator. And I would like to connect in Evgeny and also ask Evgeny, it's very tricky to understand what steps need to be done when you're just about to build your prototype, MVP, and especially if you don't have experience in tech. So what advice probably you can give to startup founders with no tech background, how to make this first step from idea to first MVP building or prototype building? What's the guideline from your side?
So the first thing is to keep it simple, extremely simple. And the second thing is to design it before developing it. So using tools like InVision Studio, and tools that allow to shape the product and understand if it makes sense or not. Every feature in a design can take days, weeks of development and bug fixes. So the key thing is to start with design, keep it simple, and then start with development after the design is validated, and keep it extremely simple on everything. So these are the first two steps.
Right. And, if again, some startup founders, they don't have tech expertise, what steps to do in order to find the CTO, and how to, make sure that's the right one, and when it's the right moment, it's need to find the CTO at idea stage, or, maybe later on when you have some simple prototype, as you mentioned.
So a technical co-founder is essential for a startup, because it makes the project realizable. So it's important to start with a CTO as soon as possible. And another thing is to have someone that has real experience, preferably a senior software engineer, and someone that at the same time is able to handle the management process. Because being a CTO is not about being the best developer, but it's also about, it's mainly also about being a manager, about the processes and the people around it. If you're the best developer around, but you're not able to plan the development, other developers won't follow you and won't work for you. A key thing on the best, on choosing the CTO is the willing of other employees to follow him. So startups attract talents when there are certain conditions. So the CTO is the best person to talk about tech, and of course it's required for him to be experienced and being able to manage people. So preferably with a past experience in it.
Right, and also as again, with no experience in tech, do you have any recommendations regarding how much time to spend, how much money to spend in order to make a first MVP or prototype to show it to people? Is it reasonable to spend 6 months to build something before you can reach out some target customers or users? Or you would try to make, I don't know, some very simple sketch and go as quick as possible?
So, well, it depends on the product, I guess. But ideally, 6 months should be a time. Well, there's not a specific time, because if you are creating an AI startup, it takes more time to provide a service that can work. So it's about the product. If, of course, your product is a service that does not require steps like collecting data and stuff AI specific, for example, then it makes sense to launch it in a few months, even in a crappy way, because the point is that the software changes a lot. So you want to make it simple, and you want to make it stable as well, because when you change the code and then you want change the features, you want the code to be stable, unless otherwise the risk is that you have too many bugs on it, so it becomes unmanageable. So it's ideally a few months. In particular cases, more than 6 months. But at that point, it also means that you have the resources to build a product, to build an MVP that takes longer.
Right, and we just got a very quick question from Tony. Tony asking what type of profile we should look at a candidate of CTO to join a startup. What tech skills or what IT skills should have on their CV? Would you recommend any guidelines again? How to see, how to check the CVs of the potential CTO candidates?
So often there's a profile that shines. PhD is something extremely wonderful, but sometimes that kind of profile is not ready to develop a solution with the startup timing. So ideally, the first thing is to have a past startup experience, so that the founder understands the time and the deals that has to take. Another thing is, of course, preferably experiences both in management and in development, so that it has a clear view about the process from many different points of view. And another thing is that when you are a co-founder, ideally you want to split out the shares 50-50. So the deal is to find someone that is not too probably higher than you. If you are a good CEO, probably a CTO at a similar level will be the best fit, because other than the tech part, there's also the personal part. There should not be the risk of the CTO that makes the brilliant solution and the CEO that feels like is less effective in some cases. So I guess someone that is passionate about tech, past experiences on startups, and someone that in general is ambitious, because being a CTO is both the ambition of building a product and also the ambition of building a good tech product. Sometimes it happens that a developer is too proud about his code. So this is the case in which it's the focus is mainly on the code, on its style, rather than on the product. And these kind of things should be avoided. The product is the main important thing in the startup. So the key thing is to keep it elegant, and at the same time to give it sense from a business point of view. So it's important to understand these points for a CTO.
Right. So yeah, Evgeny, very thankful for your reply. And Tony, feel free to ask more questions, and everyone feel free to ask more questions regarding, this criteria or anything related to finding the right CTO. Now I would like to introduce our another special guest today, Adele Botha. And Adele is our special guest and healthcare IT consultant, startup advisor and mentor, a business coach, speaker, solopreneur from London, UK. So I would love to ask the same question: how to, to make the first steps for startups with no tech background, and how to make these first steps in order to build a prototype MVP and also to validate it. Maybe Adele, you can share your experience looking at many startups you deal with, and also based on your experience. I just made you presenter, so if you can double check your camera and sound, you can click on yourself in the list. And please join our conversation, and please share your experience about how to start building a tech startup, especially if you don't have enough tech skills or tech expertise, and what to start with and what to look for. So Adele, we are waiting for you, and I just made you a presenter. So I hope you can join us very shortly. And if you can double check your camera and sound. So yes, and in the meantime, let me start the presentation, and let me start some parts of the our workshop today. So. First question again. When we just about start our product, it's very important to see how to build a proper tech infrastructure, how to make this the right foundation. And what is very important to remember or to understand that technology is not consistent. It's a day-to-day evolution. So every single time or any day you start doing something, it's very important to see what's the most relevant and most recent technologies available on the market for mobile app development, for a website building, for any tech-related development. So in order to build a proper tech infrastructure, it's very important to make research about the technologies available for the current moment. And also, it's very important to write down your development plan and expansion plan. Are you building just a website, or are you building a multi-platform application available for Android, iOS, for website as well? And also, what's your scale? Are you planning to build something for hundreds customers, or maybe for 1 million? And also, it's very important to keep in mind about the lean methodology, and split your development into milestones and some reachable points. And again, to make sure that selected technology is up to date. And I see that Adele is here. So Adele, please introduce yourself, and if you can share your experience about building a product, building a startup, and what are probably common mistakes early stage startups do, and how to prevent it.
Thank you. Yes, you wouldn't say I work in technology. I just couldn't find which button to press there, so my apologies.
No problem.
First of all, thank you for having me this evening, Slav. And so for me, my perspective is going to be a little bit broader. And I work with a lot of startups and entrepreneurs, and I think one of the best pieces of advice that I can share tonight is really to understand what is the problem that you want to solve. I think a lot of the times as entrepreneurs or startups, we get overexcited and we think, oh, wow, I've got so many ideas and there's so many problems I want to solve. But really try and focus into one specific problem, identify one specific problem, and then find either 10 or 15 people that has got that problem and have those conversations. Because what we tend to do is we jump from having an idea to starting to develop a prototype, and then trying to find this a product market fit. And then people go, well, actually, this is not really solving any of our problems. So my best bit of advice is to really look at finding a problem solution fit first. In other words, go out there, and you don't have to develop anything fancy. You don't have to spend a cent in doing that. It could literally be 2 to 3 weeks. You can go out and say, okay, I've got 10 people that has this problem. I'm going to either use a spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. I'll give you a quick example of what I did a couple of weeks ago. So I do a few different things, as you can see, but one of the key things that I've sort of pivoted towards, especially now during the COVID-19 times, to bring in a little bit of innovation, is to help large global healthcare companies solve their problem because they can't send any of their current staff out on site on hospitals to train radiographers and radiologists on their technology. And they've just recently done upgrades, right? So there's new added functionality. We had a 10-minute conversation. I said to them, okay, guys, why don't we take it online? I can help you out with that. We can launch it. They can log on. It'll take them 5 minutes to look at the update, whenever they have time, and problem solved. And instead of going out and writing a massive proposal, all I did was I have a technology partner. And this is also a key point is don't think when you start up that you have to be able to develop your own app or your own product, even if you're edtech startup, because I could see there was an edtech there as well. Go out and look at what partnerships can you identify to leverage their technology, and you bring in your knowledge, skills to add value to it. So for me, for instance, within 2 days, I have a technology platform that I use for course design, and within 2 days, I could do a demo. Right. I asked them just to send me a WebEx of any previous WebExes they've done to give me an idea. And I just built a course from a 17-minute WebEx. And within 2 days, they saw the product, which is what they want. They had the experience. They go, God, this solves our problem. There we go, done deal. No massive proposal, nothing. Now we're going to start adding some more value. Now we start adding additional functionality. It was very basic, but what we did is looked at the problem, and then identify the critical things that has to be there, that the must-haves,
right.
Build that in, and then later on you can start adding, because it's all about iteration, right? As soon as you get the feedback, they might go, well, actually it doesn't really solve my problem. Why doesn't it? Get the feedback from the customer. The customer will tell you, and then you reiterate, spend another 2 weeks, maybe change a few things, send it back to them. They go, yes, now it solves my problem. Now, you might go through a few stages or cycles where it really doesn't solve the problem. Then you have to go back and see, well, is there an actual problem, right? Because this is sort of what Eugenia was saying earlier as well, is a lot of the times we become extremely attached to our idea, right? And it's not about, don't be scared to go out there and test your concept. You're forming a hypothesis and you're testing that hypothesis, and you will either validate it or you won't. And that's fine. It's part of the process. You have to fail, and you fail quickly, and you reiterate and you say, no, but it's not because of me, or it was a stupid idea, but it's just the customer will tell you exactly, because we don't always have all the answers, but we can deliver the value. And that's what we want, is build that relationship. So for me, that would be sort of the key piece of advice. But also, it does become a little bit more complex if you look launching into industries like insurance, banking, and healthcare. Then you start working with regulatory regulations, and you have to go through various certifications and all that sort of stuff. So that takes much longer. Right. I'm an AI healthcare startup advisor, and what we do in that case, so if you work in the healthcare sector or in one of those type of industries, is identify a use case. Identify very specifically what is it that you again want to solve, what problem, and what's a quick win for the company or for whatever industry you want to go in. The quick win, the use case, and just test the use case first. Later on, you can bring on all the bells and whistles, but just keep it very simple, very focused, and keep going on what you're trying to validate. So that would be sort of my key piece of advice.
Right. And for example, if you realize definitely there is a problem, you come out with some idea and probably solution. And you mentioned before you have a tech partner, maybe having enough experience in order to build something. So what would be your advice? How to find this tech partner? What's the approach you do in order to find the relevant expert in the field in order to help you to build that relevant solution?
Exactly. It's all about networking. It's all about relationships. I think one of the things that we need to take away, and especially now, and we're going to see it now more than ever, is building long-lasting business relationships and having a very strong network. The product is great. It's fantastic, but try and move away from even calling something a product. Call it a solution, right? Because solutions is really where value lies, right? Product, yeah, it's an object. It's got its functionality. It's lovely. It looks beautiful, but that's not your business. Your business is the value that you bring to your end customers, and that's your business partners including. So my advice would be, depending on what industry you are, speak with people. I mean, even with, I have a very good connection, for instance, with a guy that runs a full team of app developers. And he's more than, and you go and you outsource your app developer. You don't have to employ a CTO. Again, depending on what it is and how techy it is and whatever. But for me, it's all about leveraging, right? For me, it's as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, I want to focus on what my strengths are. My strengths is innovation, creativity, ideas. And then I want to go, yes, actually, you know what? But I don't want to really bring in a partner so early on for 50% equity in my company. I would rather outsource it, right? I can leverage it. I can get much more value for my money, especially in the early stages. You know, once you get to a stage where you get traction, you have to scale. By all means, if you feel that bringing that in-house is going to add much more value, then do so. But go out and speak to people. I mean, anyone that's on here tonight, you can share my email, and I'm more than happy to, organize a Zoom call and we can have a chat. But it's about going out there and see what platforms there is. For instance, the one that I use is fantastic. It took me about a year, to be honest. I went through about 4 or 5 different partners to really look at what really works for me. So it's not something that happens overnight, but if you know where to look and what to look for, start small, easy, then it's worth definitely looking at that as well.
Right. Yes, it's all about networking, as you mentioned. It's a very fair point. And you have a special question about, how to validate the idea during the lockdown, and also maybe how to increase the network during the lockdown. Do you have any personal advice how to optimize this time and efforts in order to make sure you're still doing some steps forward with your tech startup development?
So to be honest, even in my own personal experience, and I do a lot of coaching as well, and business mindset coaching. And what's really interesting is the lockdown in many ways is kind of the starting phase of what every entrepreneur goes through, right? When you start working from home and you have your idea and you're working on your concept, it's a very isolating environment, right? So maybe you might go out once or twice to do a bit of networking. A lot of the time when you go out and do those network events, doesn't always come back with much value, maybe a lot of talk, but not much. You kind of have to get on with what you're doing and really identify the wants. And a lot of the time it's follow-up, and those follow-ups will be either via Zoom or Skype in any way, right? Or telephone conversation. So I wouldn't see this as a barrier. I would see this as an opportunity, because instead of just going on a phone call, for instance, is organize a Zoom call. People are much more comfortable nowadays to actually chat over a Zoom call, and there's lots of virtual parties going on by the looks of things. There's almost too many, so I'm sure that there's online networking events that's available. I know so if you guys are doing some, I mean, look at what we're doing tonight. This is a networking event, right? So you're kind of already doing it now.
Yes.
So yes, I wouldn't say look at it as a barrier to anything. I think it's kind of business as usual in many ways. We just have to, we're entrepreneurs, right? So we find different ways of making it easier. Now you don't have to travel. You save money, right? For entrepreneurs, it's all about cutting costs and saving money. So now you can leverage and be in contact with the rest of the world online, and you save money in the meantime as well.
Right, Adele, thank you very much. Please stay in chat, and we will have more discussions today, so please stay with us, and we have more questions in the chat. If you can answer to some of them, if you feel it's relevant to you. Thank you very much, Adele. It was a big pleasure to have you now, and just in the meantime, let me give you a few points about, again, the first steps of defining the direction how to start building your tech products. And as I discussed, that it's very important to find some relevant technologies, and for sure it's very important if you don't have enough expertise in the field, you can ask your CTO or your tech mentor or advisor, or you can find some tech professional who can explain you what are the recent technologies available for the markets, or which technologies you can use in order to basically create your solution or leverage your solution. And as we discussed, without trying to build something for long term, please use lean methodology, where you just come in with some very simple prototype or some sketch, where you see the feedback of potential users or customers, and you can see what they say, if they're interested to see your product development further, or they giving you feedback why it's not working for them. And also regarding the question how to validate the idea during the lockdown, I think now it's actually very great moments to validate your idea, for sure, depending on what your idea is about. But currently a lot of people online, so you can reach people via social media, via relevant interest groups. You can make a questionnaire and make a research in order to figure out if the people interested to test out your product or your solution. So the best approach is probably to make online a questionnaire or online survey, or also some kind of online demo. You can organize your online showcase or online demonstration of your solution for interested attendees or people. So you can create online events on Eventbrite, and also to get as much feedback as you can in order to get some relevant answers, and in order to understand what are the next steps. And regarding the technologies research, again, looking back to my 15 years experience in tech, the technologies we used 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, sometimes they are not relevant anymore. And it's very important to, again, to figure out what are the current technologies. And there are multiple ways to do so. So if you're trying to come with some solution for existing problem, please make an academic research for innovations and technologies being used before, maybe by your potential competitors or some other companies or individuals. On Google Scholar, you can find relevant academic papers and research papers in order to see who did something like you're trying to do, especially when it was at R&D stage, where probably you cannot find also some existing products yet, but definitely you will be able to find more than enough papers, academic papers or research articles about the problem you're trying to solve and solution. GitHub is the largest community for developers to discover. So again, if you know what your solution does, you also can go to GitHub and find some existing open source libraries or bits of code which you potentially can implement to your to your case. It can be e-commerce store, it can be a marketplace, mobile app, anything, IoT, blockchain. So again, if you're looking for some existing solutions, libraries, open source codes, go to GitHub and find some relevant sources. And also Quora is a great tool. So in Quora you can ask any questions related to pretty much everything, but also you can ask questions to regarding the tech side. And so please make a research there. And also Stack Overflow, you also can ask the questions about technologies you want to use. You can ask if people can recommend you some relevant technology or framework or language to your possible solution, how to start with, any e-books or any articles, again, in the field. And also regarding the kind of trends and kind of upcoming innovations in the industries, you can also read the articles in some online magazines like Harvard Business Review and more, in order to find what are the recent technology trends in a business context. So what are the industries need, and what are the recent trends, in order to see. So in order to make a technology research, I highly advise you to see across multiple resources and speak to multiple people. Even you don't have enough tech expertise, you also can try to kind of see some kind of the summary of the tech overview and see what are the options you have. Probably, again, you don't have to develop anything. You probably can, just find some existing solutions, implement to your particular case. And also, what is important to mention that regarding the understanding, the development, and expansion plan, when you're just about to build your prototype or product, you can prepare the questions to CTO or tech team or tech partners. When you have some product or solution in mind, write down all the features you want to have. Maybe you will start with something very basic, but you have the list of features you want to have in the future. So when you go to your CTO or tech team, please, and they advise you to use the particular programming language or framework or existing solution, which can be open source and free solution to use. Please mention those features, not only those which you just about to build right now, but also which you want in the future, because some particular solutions can have certain limitations, not allowing you to implement some features. So what is important is to see that used solution is flexible to add the new features and also scalable. And also, if you are trying to use some framework or some technology, please talk to your CTO or tech partner how easy to add new platform. For example, if you're just building a website right now, how easy it will be converted into Android app or iOS app or so on. So please, and also if you just build in a Mac OS X desktop application, again, how easy it's to tweak to Windows app, for example. So again, talk to the flexibility to your tech partners to understand that solution allowing you to use these multiple platforms. And also, if you're just about to launch your product on specific market like UK or French market or any else, ask your tech partner how easy to implement languages to add some new country like Spanish or Chinese, in order to make it localized versions of your product. How easy to transform this language? Is it need to rebuild something, or it's part of your tech solution already? And also important to discuss what is scalability potential of your product or solution. Are you trying to build something for 10 customers or 1,000 or 1 million? And depending on that, depending on scalability, you will get the kind of different answers, which tools to use and which technologies to use. And so technology selection tips. Later on, I will stop for particular technology names and languages to select for your mobile app and web developments. So in order to select the right technology, so please check upcoming trends in tech and select technology for tomorrow, not only for today, because the customers' expectations, they're rising up regarding the speed of the work, regarding the flexibility, regarding the UI. The people expect now very sleek, very nice, developed and beautiful websites or apps. And also how tech solution applicable for customers. Make sure technology won't be a reason of sale reject. So for example, if you're just about to build Android tab, make sure that your target audience, they likely have Android devices. Or if you build an iOS app, just also make sure that a significant a list of your target audience have these devices available. And also, technology perfection shouldn't be the main focus, as Adele mentioned. You probably don't need to build something very complex in order to provide solutions for your target customers. So please don't focus too much on the tech side. Please figure out the minors and limitations of each technology, but focus on the solution and make sure that solution works and provides relevant, functionality and work. And also, you can find maybe some very beautiful and good solutions, but they also can be expensive. So I believe for most of the cases, you can find some open source solutions. So if you're just about to build your MVP or prototype, just start with something very simple like open source solution, free solution, or something you don't have to build initially, in order to make sure, again, you have the first try, and you have possibility to reach out the first users without needs to build something for a couple of months. And now I just have also our special guest and expert, Lorenzo Espinosa. So Lorenzo, if I can make you a presenter right now, and also ask you to share your experience about how to select the relevant technologies, and maybe again speak to the CTO or tech team in order to make sure you make a first steps correctly. And so just let's make sure. Again, Lorenzo, I just made you presenter.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hey, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Slava. Yeah, I think when it comes to selecting the right technologies is definitely, to your point, it definitely depends on the kind of what you're building, right, and the stage you're at. To echo some of the points made earlier, it's definitely important to understand when to invest in technology, and only do it if you have validated your product very thoroughly. So what I'd say is, at this point, there are so many resources available that and technologies available that don't require deep tech expertise, that it's really easy to kind of validate that product really quickly, right? Like I'm thinking of tools like, when it comes to design tools like Figma, Marvel, to really like low fidelity designs, and really finding a way of de-risking your tech investment. Also, as Slava mentioned, it's important to think about scalability, because even though on the one hand we don't want to commit resources to something that might not work, on the other hand, we need to be thinking ahead, right? So we need to be thinking about how the whole infrastructure will scale, how the whole the pieces or the building blocks that we're fitting together, how they would work at a scale if we had, like the 10x the amount of customers, and work backwards, right? So it's important to keep both angles in mind. But when it comes to deciding which one to tackle first, I definitely tackle the first one, right? So try to use technologies that are that don't require that really deep expertise to use, but at the same time would allow you to de-risk your product development, right? So both on the design side, but also on the tech, on the engineering side.
Lorenzo, can you maybe mention the typical mistakes which a lot of early stage startups do, maybe by selecting the wrong technology, or maybe making wrong research process? Anything, to prevent, any advice, how to make sure, again, you're making right steps? Is it like, what would you advise to go to your CTO or advisor or mentor? Who would be the best person to talk in order to make sure you're on the right track?
So when it comes to product management, or product development, which is what we're discussing here, is definitely a team effort, right? So the CEO at an early stage startup is normally the product manager, right? The lead product manager, the one who shapes the vision, and the CTO would be kind of the technical counterpart. So when it comes to steps, the first step, as it's been mentioned before, it's definitely understanding the customer needs, right? So once we've validated with very minimal product development or engineering development that we have something in our hands like product market fit, we're actually solving a solution, then it's the time to kind of making the product a bit more like putting meat around the bones, so to speak. So one of the mistakes that I see, that we often see in startups, is for founders to really get excited about product and really start developing before the hypotheses have been tested, like proven or disproven. So once you start more from like very like big pool of ideas, start refining your product in terms of sort of a funnel, that's when you need to start checking with your technical counterpart, right? So you're getting the sense from a CEO point of view, you're getting the sense from the market as to what works, what might work, what customers might need, and then you start thinking about how to actually build the product. But for that, you of course need the technical counterpart. So what I meant by it's a team effort is because you need to actually check with this person constantly, and thinking about where you want to get to, and work backwards from there. And this person, the CTO, would help you brainstorm the best technologies and the trade-offs between one or the other.
Right. And again, as we mentioned before with Adele, and maybe you can recommend as well, would you advise to find the CTO or to outsource your tech development, or to find some reliable development team? What would be the best approach, to have something to build in-house or to outsource some development process?
So that's a good question. It would be a combination of mainly two things. The first one being like the point you're at with your product development, right? So like, are you just having an idea that you would just want to test? Do you actually have something that you validated? Do you have a product potentially that you really want to pursue? And then on the other hand is like the chemistry that you have with that person. So I'll start with the second one. When it comes to selecting a CTO, is like with any other founder, potentially if there is more than one non-technical founder, it's definitely a big dating exercise, so to speak. So you really want to have someone who is going to be committed with you, who is really gonna pursue the venture with the same level of commitment, as I said. So that's why jumping into selecting a CTO, I just need a CTO because I just need to develop something, potentially is not the best idea, because you really want to have some time with that person, potentially a few months with a developer, and see, well, could this person be my CTO? Back to echo Eugenio's point, like, can this person not only be a technical resource and developer, but also can this person be a manager? So that's one factor. And then back to my previous point, it is also a matter of where you are in the journey. So if you just need something to create something to validate, or you have one developer but you need to scale, or you need to create something else, but you're not fully committed about the resources, or you don't have enough funding, that may make sense to potentially outsource. But as you start growing, the outsourcing can backfire. So I think outsourcing is potentially a good idea in the early stages. But when it comes to scaling the company and really continue to develop that product, it might make sense to start bringing development in-house.
Right. Yes. Another, I guess, to make sure when you are scaling up your project, you don't have some kind of the critical dependency on third party. Exactly. Where probably you have some, again, you need to make something much quicker, and you need to have someone in your closed environment in order to make it quick, and also make sure it's the right steps in your team. Lawrence, thanks a lot. Feel free to, please, our request, feel free to ask the questions about building a product, a prototype, MVP. We are here to give the answers. Lorenzo, please stay with us as long as you can. I know you have some other commitments today. Mm-hmm. So please, thank you very much. And please stay in our chat as soon as you can. And please reply the questions if you can, in order to help our guests to understand how to make this process work. Yes, if you just can lock down your microphone, please. And then... we carry on, and again, as I discussed, that please feel free to ask your questions, and let me just jump back to the first steps of product development or prototype, as we discussed, or solution development. So let me show you this diagram, because as you mentioned before, that it's important to have the lean methodology. And for sure, it's down to the nature of solution you're trying to build, down to the sector, the complexity of the solution you're trying to build. But what is important to mention that any development process, it's very important to split into some sprints or phases. And what is very important is to make a significant milestones. So For example, you can make the very basic version of your solution, maybe MVP or very simple too, in first phase, and probably you can make it, let's say, in 4 or 6 weeks. But after you did something very simple, it's extremely important to go to your target audience and talk to your potential customers and see the interest, see the feedback. If you see the very positive feedback, you see relevant comments, what's to improve, what to add into your simple solution or simple version of your solution. So then you can start second phase. Again, maybe it can be 4 or 6 weeks, maybe it can be 1 or 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the solution you're trying to build. But it's very important to keep them like very quite short. So not like 3 months each phase, it's too long. So ideally, if you can build some add-ons or a new version of your solution in 2, 4, 6 weeks maximum, that would be great. And then you can show to your potential users or customers, get the feedback, and make some further improvements. Only, as we discussed before, you get the validation that there is a need or to the product you're trying to build, and also the people are quite satisfied what you built so far, or they really keen to see what's next. So ideally, each phase of your solution development should bring you more potential users or customers. So there is no point to invest 6 months of development with no interested people not interested in your product or service. So again, when you make first tweaks and make a first version of your product or service, please go to your target audience, make online research, make online tests, or any online engagement, even now in lockdown time. So please make sure you have this kind of the milestones, and you use that lean methodology in order to optimize what would be your next steps. And we discussed here that not everyone, have enough expertise in tech science. And just a few points about having a third-party developers, which could be a good option, especially at early stage, as we discussed with Lorenzo. That the advantages of in working with third-party developers or some relevant tech partner, that they can have a strong expertise in the field. You can find exactly those experts in blockchain, in IoT, or healthcare sector, or e-commerce, any relevant to your solution you're trying to build. Also, if you deal with a tech partner or tech team, usually it's a scalable, you can have a scalable team resources, and you probably can have one developer up to, I don't know, 10, 15, or even more. And so that means that you won't have some kind of delays in development if you have some good, reliable development team. Also, it can be cost efficient. You can find a good, affordable tech developer, tech partner in order to provide a cost efficient development. And also, it's equity free or flexible terms. You can figure out the the cost of hour or some fixed fee for third party or flexible terms for your work. But also, it's important, in order to find some relevant supplier, it's important to create own research in order to find. And Tony, thanks for your question. How do I find reliable and trustworthy third-party developer? Is there an industry body or standard that regulates? That's a very good question. Please, I would ask our experts to give your comments or any recommendations. I have exactly that slide for you just after that one. Before, I just would make a stress about some minors, the drawbacks of using the third-party developers as well, for you to understand that it has a positive and also some minors. Some third-party developers, they probably not really involved into your business side, or maybe they don't really understand the kind of how the solution should work. So potentially the third-party developers can have lack of understanding your business needs. So it's very important to make sure your developers, they really understand what exactly you're trying to build with them. Also, what are the kind of very common case for third-party developers? They offer you what exactly they know regarding the technology, regarding the some frameworks, any solutions, because it's down to what they know, or maybe it's down to their expertise, but not exactly what exactly you need to have. So because each tech expert or each tech developer, they have limited knowledge. So please make sure when they offer you something to build, it's exactly what you need regarding the technology. And maybe the reason why they're giving you the proposal for certain technologies is because they know something very good, and that's it. And also, please make sure and discuss with your third-party developers about support terms and consistency. So if you need developer in 3 months' time, are they still going to be available for some further improvements, for add-ons, and so on? So it's very important to kind of to make sure that the company or team working for significant amount of time, and if you are going to have the further developments with the same team, you will be able to reach them afterwards. Maybe, as I said, maybe in a few months' time, or maybe even a year. So answering to Tony regarding how to select the trustworthy third-party developer. So please, first of all, don't rely just on one supplier or tech developer. Contact several ones at least. So find several ones, or find, first of all, as I said, you can actually, one of the good examples, you can make research about the competitors in your field. And also on LinkedIn, you can find who is the CTO of the startup or any company, and also you can see the expertise of the certain CTO. What exactly the certain professional, what his or her expertise, and which technology your competitor use in order to build a product, which language, which programming language. And it's possible to figure out in most of the cases which programming language or technology is being used for a certain startup. So I highly advise to make research to your competitors and see at least which technologies they used, and maybe also which kind of the partners they work with. Sometimes you can go to a website and you can see who was the tech partner or who developed the website or any e-commerce or app solution. So first of all, make a research about your competitors, and also the good hint of the reliable developer team when they able to give you a good proposal and comprehensive proposal, giving you the few options. And when they propose in you a certain programming language or a certain technology, they also give you the kind of the drawbacks and advantages of using certain technology. So when you say, when you go to a certain development team and you say, okay, I need to build e-commerce solution, and you ask, okay, what's the proposal regarding what programming language or web platforms to use? And then certain development team giving you the, sort of the proposal. It's not about only complete selection. Yes, we're going to use that technology or that platform. Ask them to give you the kind of overview, providing several points and reasons why those certain technologies good to use regarding the price, scalability, some limitations, and so on. And also, please ask for recommendations. Feel free to contact your friends, your colleagues, or some people in the field, and ask for recommendations for someone worked for a long time with someone successfully. And also check out the reviews, check out the portfolio of the team, and also ask the similar projects. And also, as I said, if you figure out that some tech development team, they did already several similar projects, you can contact the customers and ask for feedback if they were satisfied. And you can also see the rating in Google Play and Apple Store to see how users satisfied with the solution. Are they if there are many bugs or issues with a particular app or website, or it's pretty much fine. and also check out again how it works yourself and make sure it's a good one. And yes, so it's need to do kind of multiple activities in order to find the relevant tech team. And also, before actually building anything, please, it's very important to make a documentation regarding what exactly you're trying to build. And why it's very important to prepare documentation, to prepare recommendation for your tech development. Because in order to, when you have R&D documentation, what exactly you built, what is the scope, what are the requirements, you can get a tax return, at least in the UK. If you spend certain money in your startup for R&D, you can get a tax return due to R&D expenses. So please make sure you have all the description of exactly what you built so far, and how much money you spent for development. And also why it's important to have documentation, because you can have in the future you can hire some new developers. So it's need to make sure you have the guidelines for new developers joining your team, and also in order to make sure those technologies are clear for your new developers. And also in order to have the patents and copyright. So if you bring in some great innovation, or you make an invention, you can make a copyright or patents of your innovation. So again, it's very important to clarify. It's very important to clarify what exactly you built in your company. And you also can realize that actually you can make a patent or copyright or register a copyright of your solution. And also disputes protection. So in case you build in something and you worked out with the tech team, when you have development documentation, you can avoid any disputes or argues, because sometimes as I said, it can be the case of misunderstanding the requirements and misunderstanding what startup founder looking for to see as a complete solution or product. So, and also it helps you keep track of developments, the way how it works. So again, just a quick update about where to find the third-party developers, LinkedIn recommendations, events, online, offline, when it will be available in the future, hackathons and pitch days, demo days. Also, job talent platforms. As I said, make research about your competitors. Go to TechCrunch, go to F6S, join startup weekends, Angel List, attend some virtual or offline events in the future like Slash, Idea Lab, Web Summit, many more. Again, to expand your network of reliable tech tech developers. And as you know, now we can work all remotely, so it doesn't you don't always need to have a team around you or living in the same city or country. So it's much more important to find the relevant expert in the field of relevance to your solution. So as I said, please ask more questions regarding how to validate tech development team, how to make first steps of tech development. Also, we discussed about how to make a good find a good decision and find a good team for your tech development, but also how to reduce expenses on tech, especially at first steps. So again, if you're just about to validate your idea, please use open source solutions. And if you don't have enough capital to pay salary or fees for tech development, you can find the CTO or developers with equity to join your startup, or you can find some relevant researchers like PhD researchers or some students doing some university projects in programming, in software development, or deep tech, where they can be part of your development process due to the experience or due to the coursework they need. So again, if you struggle to find some resources, financial resources to build something, find some relevant students or researchers in the field, aiming maybe to help you in exchange of the experience, knowledge. And there are multiple of engineering universities across Europe. So again, if you need more recommendation, feel free to ask in our chat. And also, again, if you have certain fees for one development team which are too high, you probably can find some another team with more affordable rates. And there are many sources where you can find the affordable development teams. And also, as I said, don't try to build everything at the same time. Please use the lean methodology and make the milestones in order to make sure you're able to make some first sales before jumping into long-term development plan. And just a few points as well, how to build a proper website and app for a startup. If you're just about to make prototype or MVP or website or app, there are a few points. So it's very important to organize the development process. So you need to have a tech specs and development plan. What exactly you aiming to build? What are the requirements? What are the description? You also able to use the task management tools, and you also have some project manager responsible for development process. And also you build something phase by phase or sprint by sprint. So you don't try to build everything from day one and without showing anything to your customers. And also after completing every significant milestones, please make re-evaluation, talk to your customers and see how it's relevant to use those, how it's relevant to keep doing the development later on. And the first part of tech specs, it's make a logical wireframes. So when you're just about to build something, you can draw a sketch what exactly you're trying to build. To make a drawing of screen or user interface, it's kind of the logical representation of what you aiming to build, and discuss it with your tech team or CTO or tech partner. But initially, you can build something on your piece of paper and build some first logical wireframes. Then again, in tech specs, you need to describe what's need to be developed, very clear description, and also which technologies, programming languages, and frameworks will be used. If you don't know the answers to those questions or to those things, please ask your tech partner to fill it up and make sure you understand what exactly they're going to use. And also every page and elements on the page should have complete functionality description. So you have, 5 screens or 5 sections of your website or app. Make sure every single button or every single element you have described how it will look like and what is going to be there. And also copyright terms. So if a tech development team proposing you use certain solution or any existing product, please clarify who is the owner of the product, because definitely certain open source solution or some third-party developed tools, you can realize that you are not going to be the owner of the product. So you potentially can use the product with some copyright terms, but you won't be owner of the product. And when you're just building something in your house, inside of your team, you can become an owner of your product. So it's very important to clarify with your tech development team who will be owner. And the reason why it's very important, because this question can be asked by investors or your future partners. If you pitch in your startup to your potential investor or business partner, they will ask you the question, okay, you have amazing product, who owns the code, who is the owner of R&D and intellectual property? So please make sure you have that documentation described, who is owns what. And also what is very important is to create a user journey or test scripts. So every single button or every single functionality, it's very important to clarify what certain button or functionality in terms of your solution does. Regarding, if I'm clicking here, what's happening? And the reason why it's very important, because when certain development team are making a solution for you, the question how to make sure that the product was built, it's exactly works the way you want it to do. So that's why it's very important to write down user journey scripts or test scripts to write down all the cases, what user can do with your solution, every single action, like clicking here and there, and what will appear on the screen of the app or website or anything. And that's the way how we will test out that your product does exactly what you expect it to be. So please make sure you have those test scripts before building anything. And also, when you are having agreement with your development team inside of your team or outside, you need to make sure to have clear roadmap, a clear timeline, which parts of development will be delivered when. Let's say 2 weeks will be spent on UX design, then 4 weeks of front-end and back-end development, then the customer's feedback, testing phase, and also you need to make sure which milestones like design sign-off, prototype, final sign-off. You need to have very clear understanding what is the development plan for each phase of your solution development. And so please make sure, again, you understand that even you don't have enough tech experience, but you understand the kind of the sequence, the frame and direction. And as I mentioned before, it's very important to use the task management tools. This is just an examples like tools like Monday.com, Trello, Slack, or in order to make sure you have relevant task management tools in order to track what's going on day-to-day basis with your tech development process. If there are some bugs, you can write down these bugs or issues with your developing solution in these task management tools, and make sure, again, you keep track of your tasks and your development plan according to the deadlines. So you need to have very clear deadlines of anything you're trying to build. And also, what we discussed here, that if you're trying to build a website or even app, nowadays it's very important to make sure you have a cross-platform solution, and it's something applicable for multiple devices like an iOS or your laptop or like a desktop application. So and there are some website platforms available already, like a WordPress, Shopify, Wix, and many more. There are some positive and some advantages of using those platforms because they are free of or low cost. It's easy to find a developer to build a website on WordPress, Shopify, Wix. It's usually quite quick because you have ready complete, very nice and beautiful templates to build a website, and you have a bunch of plugins like e-commerce, marketplaces, ordering form, Google Maps integrated into your website, many more. And again, it will be easy to find support and developers. There are some kind of the drawbacks. Sometimes the WordPress or some other solutions, they load quite slowly. The reason why, because they're quite universal and the code is quite long and quite rich. And also sometimes the WordPress plugins, especially from third-party developers, they can be hacked. So if you are using some plugins for WordPress or some other platforms, make sure the plugins are secured enough. Because, as I said, there are sometimes there are situations where your website or your platform can be hacked. And also sometimes you could realize that online solutions like WordPress and other tools, they're not fully customizable. It's down to the templates existing and plugins existing on the platform. But if you have some very specific criteria, you can realize that you're not able to use a certain template in order to make it. And sometimes it's very time consuming to make some change in small improvements in UI or functionality of having the WordPress Shopify Wix. Well, it's great when you use it as it is with existing solution. And also, just to make sure you are not owner of the WordPress platform Shopify Wix, you can use that or you can use that template, but you're not becoming the owner of the solution you built with those platforms. You're just able to use them, but you are not own them. And if you just realize that you need to have something much more specific, you can build a bespoke website, for example, and it takes longer. It's usually more expensive. And if some reliable tech team developed it for you, sometimes it's hard to switch to another development team. But also, what is good when you build some bespoke website solution or web app, it can be your startup asset, so you can actually again consider it as your intellectual property. Also, it can be scalable and flexible, and you can have any customization you can have, and also make sure it's secured enough, because the nature of development bespoke website can allow you to create this as best security solution as you need to build. And again, I'm jumping into building also a proper mobile application. But before that, if you don't mind, I just would invite the Harry Ho. And Harry is the startup founder, and he built his own drone stream startup. And I would ask Harry to share your experience of how you develop your product, which tools do you use, which program languages you use, how did you select them, and how you make sure you're on the right track. If you can share the your experience and explain a bit more about your product and startup. So hi Harry, good evening.
Good evening. Hi all. So DroneStream is a platform that allows drone pilots to collaborate with their organization. And just a quick background, basically how it came about was I used to work in commercial drone operations, using drones for commercial flights, like in the media industry and the film industry. And I realized that it wasn't very straightforward to actually pull the video data and push it out to other members of the crew, or perhaps other members of their organization that perhaps are not on site. And the out-of-the-box solutions that existed were YouTube and Facebook. And obviously, if you're in a if you're doing this for perhaps a Fortune 500 company, or someone who wants to keep it secure, and you say, hey, log on to Facebook or log on to YouTube in order to stream this video, they're going to look at you. They're going to look at you and think you're not fully you're not the most professional outfit. So we created. It's funny you mentioned Wix and WordPress. I think that's a really good piece of advice. Is when you first think of this solution, what's a great idea is actually to create a website to sort of get that validation, to see if there is a product market fit. Because although we could argue that we're a customer and we can see that there's clearly a need for this, who else is there? And we found that law enforcement agencies in the US especially were really keen to have some sort of a live streaming solution for their drone program. And New York State mayor office got in touch with us and said, okay, we're trying to do this now. Can you help us? So from there, we realized that it was definitely something that we need as drones sort of rolled out, as we may have seen with a lot of the COVID response at the moment. People are trying to self-isolate. They're trying to law enforcement agencies are trying to keep away from members of the public. So drones are being pushed into the public space a bit more. I think as far as pushing it from something you realize there is a product market fit for, and you want to push it into development, finding a CTO is a challenging process. And how I found that was through a website called Upwork. So you can find a lot of development to outsource to via the Upwork platform. And but what I was really keen to find, I went to all these networking events, and you could never, you sort of pitched the idea, and they kind of went, yeah, it's good, but you never really had someone with that sort of hardcore passion that you also have for this for the same idea.
Right.
So I decided to pay an organization through Upwork for the development of the initial the MVP. And I was really lucky because I chose a development company based out in the Ukraine, and they were extremely passionate about it, far beyond just, okay, pay me to do this app. They had ideas for themselves, and I realized that these guys were in it for the long game, and were very keen to come along for the journey with me. So I flew over there. I met my now CTO, and we decided to make a deal beyond the MVP that we would actually become partners in actually creating this. So years have gone by, and we're now Sony's invested in us, and we've got a version 2 due out in a couple of months. So it's I think if I was to offer some advice on the whole development process, it would certainly be develop those lines of communication with your development team, and make sure it's fluid. Don't have them sending emails here, messages here, WhatsApps here. It's good to have a solid base that everyone else can see, so everyone's always on the same page. And just ensure that I think Eugenio mentioned it in the very beginning about keeping it simple. I think when you first propose the idea, you're going to have steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, already mapped out in your head. But in order to get buy-in, you've originally got to set that out in a really simple way. And I think designing wireframes, even if it's just on a piece of paper, even if it's just you get a Sharpie and you design. If you're not comfortable with using Figma and the other sort of prototyping tools, then yeah, just do it on a piece of paper. And seeing how all that pieces together gives the developer a really good idea as exactly what you're trying to do. And because otherwise, if they're merely taking what you've said, they'll create it based on what they think is best, which may not be how you originally have envisaged it, right? So I think that's probably one of my main pieces of advice. And I think to keep costs down, I think definitely try pushing the MVP out to customers first, and try develop a group of loyal followers, if you like, that are keen to use your product, and they understand it's going to be an MVP. They understand it's going to be a bumpy road. And sort of engage and get that feedback from there. And from that, you can then take that to investors and then say, well, New York State Police have said this; they're keen to do this, and it's something that not only it's good for your own development process, but seeking investment as well. It shows that even if it's an MVP, people are still interested in using your product. And I think another good piece of advice is it's very easy for you to become very protective over your product. You want it to be perfect before you push it out to your idyllic customer base. For example, Homeland Security pre-COVID, they were keen to test it out, and I was like, give us a couple of months and we'll get you the really slick version. But eventually that relationship will degrade. They want it now. They might look elsewhere for another solution otherwise. So it's good strike when the iron's hot. If your product does what it originally set out to do, the original solution that you're solving, then let them try it. Explain that the new features that are coming out in a couple of months are X, Y, and Z, and you'll also benefit from that. So yeah, it's very. I think the minute you have a product that solves the solution, get it out there. Don't delay. It's not going to be pretty from day one, but it's a work. It's a work in progress, and you should use that feedback to further mold it. Yeah, and that's I think that's really the key aspects that I would really try and convey. And yeah, I think it's, as far as CTOs go as well, I think it's good to find someone who can be as equally obsessed with finding the solution as you are, and with enough technical knowledge to focus on the sort of that's what I'm looking for, the technical end, while you can focus on the market end. So, for example, I'm sort of the drone nerd, if you like. So I know a lot about drones. I know a lot about the customers that would use drones. Whereas my business partner and CTO, he's more about the actual function of our solution, the development end. So it allows me to take a lot of strain off my thought process of saying, okay, what are we going to do here? How are we going to do this as far as the development goes? So yeah, I think a CTO should really, I think when you go 50-50 with someone, you think, wow, it's a lot of stake in the company they're giving away, but they are really focusing on half the problem, and you're focusing on the other half of the problem. Bringing that money in while they're focusing on actually pushing that product.
Right. Thanks a lot. And also, maybe if you don't mind, maybe we have your presentation. If you'd like to make a brief jump across your slides, just to give a bit more insights of what exactly your product does and how it looks like. I guess you have a control of your presentation. If you can check out the errors or.
I don't think I can switch slides.
Or
would you?
Can I?
There we go. Yeah, sure. So the solution itself, I think, for those of you who don't know much about drone technology and how it's been used commercially, is it's how it often works in the emergency service sector and construction sector. Is you'll have a pilot or perhaps an engineer or perhaps a police officer that's trained in order to actually fly those drones professionally. They'll go down to the site, launch the drone, but they'll have a team surrounded by, they'll have a team on site, and they'll have a team in the control room, perhaps based elsewhere, that need instant insight into exactly what that drone is seeing. And the problem we have is that pilot is then having to radio in, they're having to perhaps tell someone else to then convey that information in real time, or what they often are left to do is actually record that information, especially in the construction sector, and then send it to them as soon as they can. But then when they send them the recording, they say, well, that's not the information we needed. Can you go back out and make the flight? And, in some cases, these engineers are on a bridge where they're being paid $300 an hour in the US, for instance. So time is crucial. So what we've done in this essence is that guys in the control room, guys on site, they can actually tap into the video feed via a desktop, a tablet, or a mobile phone. Dead simple. That is the basic solution. There's all sorts of ways we can adapt it for the construction sector, which they're keen to implement. There's all sorts of ways we can adapt it for the emergency service sector. But as far as the main solution that we're trying to solve is just about getting the video feed, exactly all the information that the pilot is privy to. So the location of the drone, and actually once that live stream is finished, they can actually pull that as a recording and review it again later as well. Could you switch to the next slide, please, David? Thank you. So yeah, going back to the founding team. So Dennis, my business partner, he owns his own software company. So we've been really fortunate in the fact that we haven't had to go out and find a team that work well together is Dennis and his software company. They have Android developers, they have iOS developers, and we've been able to actually bleed our development out through his software company. So it's taken a lot of stress off, especially myself. You know, as you all know, the fundraising process is a long and arduous game, and you know, if I was having to deal with a lot of the development aspects as well, then it would have certainly been a lot more of a strain than it's been. So yeah, it's been really good. And I think going back to the sort of lean startup model is we'd actually developed a website. This is our initial website, and we spent about £2,000 on it. Right, so you know, it's funky. It does, you know, it swishes here, swishes there. It's very nice, but if you were a lean startup, which we are, then £2,000 is a lot of money. And I think you can have the same effect developing something on Wix or I've forgotten the name of the other one now. WordPress, for instance. Thank you. Yeah, so you can do the same on those other websites. And if you mind switching to the other side, this was we had to create a quick website for our enterprise subscriptions, and we developed it on Wix, and this was the result. And there's not that much of a difference. There's some, you know, it's not as highly polished as the other one, but you know, we still have people viewing it, understanding the product, booking meetings through this website as well. And they, you know, it does what it says on the tin. And I think, you know, people are so concerned about making it as highly polished as possible. And it is a bit of a vanity thing, I think, where if you throw money at a solution of, you know, building a website, then it's not always the most cost-effective way of doing things. You know, stuff like websites, stuff like videos as well. You know, the product release video. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be. We'll hire a professional company to do it. You'd be surprised that you probably get the same effect with one that you may have made yourself. You know, so yeah, there's all sorts of ways to be lean, and don't think that it comes at a high cost. I think you can get the same effect by actually putting in the time yourself using pre-existing tools like Wix.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, and you know, as we see the both slides, it's not you know, there is no much difference, and you don't feel this difference of 2,000 and maybe the kind of very affordable version of Wix in order to get roughly similar result. And I have just one more question to you, if possible. So looking back to your first steps, how long it took you to build your first MVP or first version of your software? Weeks, month, or hours? And also, what lesson you learned as a startup founder in connection to the tech aspect of building a startup? Maybe something you wasn't aware of, it took you longer than you expected, or it's much more complex than you thought. You know, what is the main lesson you learned out of the first steps of building the product?
Well, our MVP took 3 months initially, but it was extremely rough cut. And I think as a first-time founder, the MVP I was quite surprised by. You know, it works. It does what it says on the tin, but it's you know, you're envisaging something more highly polished, and you just got to manage those expectations when you first create the first product. So yeah, that took 3 months, and I think what disappointed me the most when I took that to the market was this was on iOS, so a lot of them said, "Oh, we want to great, fantastic," but a lot of our users, a lot of our employees, we use Android devices. So you know, you start thinking, "Wow, that's not something I'd really considered about." You know, the guys that the companies that are using these drones, what sort of devices are they using? You know, I'm very much an Apple man, so you know, you sort of fall into that trap that everyone else is, right? So yeah, that was a learning curve. But I think the biggest learning curve for me was, when we started throwing a lot more money into it, we developed a Android app as well. We actually developed a web platform. We wanted to create a low latency live stream. So to the mobile devices, so live streaming from the drone to other Android and iOS devices, we successfully managed to do. We're very proud of that. But then when we wanted to push that live stream out to the web browser version, control rooms would be needing this. Then that's when it became really tricky. And to a non-technical founder, you think, well, if we're doing it to the mobile devices, then why can't we do it to the it's surely straightforward. But it's different languages. You're going to need you're going to have to build a player actually to receive that live stream in the same latency as the apps. So it actually becomes something, is an extremely complex problem that has cost us a lot of time and a lot of finances in order to actually build our own player, and that was unforeseen. But I mean, it all ends up falling into your intellectual property, and you're actually creating something even more unique, a lot more defensible. So yeah, I think if you've already built your MVP, try and foresee, especially if you already have a technical founder on board, try and foresee the problems that are going to face you further on down the line. And I think your customers are going to help you be able to steer that. So, if a customer came to us and said, we want low latency live streams to a desktop, if we'd have found that out much sooner, we may have been able to manage our finances a little bit better. But it's certainly, the more feedback you get and then the earlier you get it, the better it'll be in the long run.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think it's a very common case when you think that building the same solution for just a different platform as Android or web app takes exactly the same time, or maybe it's pretty much a simple task. But in reality, it can happen that it's much longer, it's much more complex due, as you mentioned, to the having a different language or platform or framework. And I think those questions or this kind of the two sides dialogue should come from between CEO or CTO, where you ask how long it takes. Is it much more complex to have an Android app in comparison to iOS, or the same? How long it take, or what are the limitations or challenges we can face before actually you trying to build something? And I think that's helps, again, to downgrade some expectations probably at some point, and also to give you a bit of just understanding better, what's your timeline, and what's also it also can be part of your pricing strategy. If some people, they want to have the multi-platform too, maybe you charge them more. If they just want to have Android app, that part costs them less. And maybe you're going to kind of put cost of your tech development into your clients. If they want to make this completely multi-platform, let them pay more, and let them feel the pain as well a bit. But again, it's down to the strategy of your business. But still, Harry, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sharing your experience. A very interesting project and a very interesting case study. Then from going into Upwork to finding a relevant tech development team up to finding a CTO, I think it's a great example of making this kind of the step-by-step approach of building some tech business, and make sure, again, you are not jumping directly with someone you don't know, and you make a kind of the agile methodology of building your product together. Great case study. Thanks a lot. And please stay with us if you can share some good examples or good advice to our attendees. So please stay with us. And pleasure to have you. Thank you very much. And let me carry on, and let me give you a few more points about let me make a few points about the technologies. As we mentioned before, about the different options for website development and the platforms. And as I mentioned before, that there are for website development, you can use a WordPress, Shopify, Wix, but also you can use a bespoke solution. And as we discussed with Harry, that sometimes the bespoke website is not something you really need, and it's something can be optional, and you can optimize your expenses as well. But coming back to the proper mobile application developments, that also can be quite tricky. And as again we had a discussion just now, that you can have the multiple platforms for your possible solution. So you have an iOS app, Android, and also it can be the web app. And it's not sometimes easy to do the same for different platforms. So it can be much more easier, let's say, to make an iOS app, and much more complex to do exactly the same for Android or a web app, for example, or vice versa. So again, before building any multi-platform tool or solution for your startup, please talk to your CTO or tech team in order to make sure what to expect. And jump into this a bit of tech side of building a solution. So when you build in any tech-related product, you likely have the front-end developments, everything what your customers see visually, like your app on your device, iOS or Android or web. And also you have the backend development where you operate with user data, you run some certain scripts, and you can also analyze data on backend environment. And also when you develop any tech product, you also need to allocate certain resources for testing and support in order to make sure, again, it works. So when the backend development can be universal for multiple platforms, for front-end development, you can have a standalone programming languages in order to build website or mobile app or desktop application for your computer. Or it can be universal framework or universal language, which can save up your time and money. But coming back to the first steps of building a product, as we discussed before, there are multiple tools which you can use to make a UX design and prototyping. So there are Sketch, Markup Plus, Just in Mind, and more. And the notebook is the first tool you can use. Is basically the piece of paper where you can draw the way how do you think your design would look like. And designing this on the paper, it helps you a lot also to talk to your tech team in order to understand how, what exactly you're trying to build, in order to understand the requirements and expectations. And why the UX design applications are very handy and useful to develop some kind of the mock-up and sketch, because they already have some kind of the pre-designed templates which you can use, like buttons, like a special checkboxes, user interface elements, in order to speed up the process of building the prototype. So again, you can test out the multiple UX apps, and feel free to ask the recommendations if you need to. And also, if you're just about to build your web app or any application, please go to check out some nice UX design templates. So if you're looking for some nice design templates, you can find them online. And there are multiple of resources like Dribble. It's WordStop designers and creative professionals platform where you can find the good UX designer. You can see so many nice developed templates for website, for mobile app. And you can find some reliable developer for front end as well. Also, good tools to use. The flat icon is the free platform, royalty-free icons for your app, for your website, for any platform you're trying to build. They are very handy. Also, color scheme generator. If you like looking for a great color scheme of your app or your product, you can find a great generator able to have a nice design and nice colors for your product. Also, contrast checker, it's very important for, as we discussed about last week, for pitch decks, but also contrast checker is very important when you develop your design of your app or website, in order to make sure you have relevant contrast between the backgrounds and the fonts, the headlines, the images you use. And also CSS layout generator. So again, if you looking for some bespoke customization of design elements of your app or web app, there are nice CSS layout generator you can use for front-end development. And also, if you, it's very important to test out and make sure your website or web app looks well on multiple devices. So you can use the responsive test tool to test the same your website or web app on multiple devices and see how it looks like across the multiple devices and screen sizes. And it's very important, because if you don't have this responsive layout, you can realize that actually the website looks very brilliant on iOS 10, for example, but it looks very terrible on iOS 5 or some another devices. So please make sure your web app or your product is good and responsive due to the different dimensions and the screen sizes. And you can use the test tool to test it out easily and speak to developers. Prototyping tools are able to build some kind of the feeling that you have the complete product by connecting the different wireframes into the logical connections. So you can click to different sections of your website or web app, and you can use InVision, Fluid UI, Proto.io, and others. So again, please check out the prototyping tools. They're very handy to check out before you actually do any coding. So you can use just the graphics and use, and Canva is great for digital marketing posts and some other UX development as well. So again, before actually building any bits of code, please use the prototyping tools to see and also be able to showcase to the customers how your product would look like. So again, prototyping is something you can draw on the paper, but also something you can do via the apps, and will allow you to the sequences and the connections with your different sections. And regarding the front-end development, if you speak about the iOS, Android platform on multi-platform, for iOS, we definitely have Objective-C Swift a language to build an iOS app, or you can use the Java or C++ for Android. And there are multiple different multi-platform frameworks and languages you can use for a multi-platform development, which means you can use the same code for building iOS, Android app at the same time, which saves up a lot of time and money. But for sure, it depends on the nature of the product you're trying to build. But sometimes the multi-platform platforms and frameworks are quite handy and helpful to do so. So there are multiple of them. Again, if you're interested, if you want to figure out what is the good option for you, please feel free to reach me out via LinkedIn later on. I'm happy to advise, or feel free to reach out our experts tonight. There are multiple frameworks like Xamarin, Angular, Kotlin, NativeScript, React, Flutter. And please, in order to understand, talk to your CTO in order to understand which frameworks for multi-platform apps you can use. Just a quick overview, like for example, Xamarin technology is used and developed by Microsoft. There are multiple of the apps developed by using Xamarin. And Ionic is very popular because it's web-based technology, very easy to build multi-platform apps. And Angular in general is very popular because, again, it's web-based and it's very easy, and a lot of apps is developed on Angular. Kotlin is the very trendy, technology and language you can use for developing apps. And there are some good examples of apps developed on Kotlin. And also Flutter. Flutter, supported by Google, is the new language also you can use for UI front-end development, and make it very handy. Again, if you want to figure out what is the best option for you, feel free to reach me out later on, or talk to our experts. And a native script also was an option. And currently React is very popular one, and React is run by Facebook. So the Facebook mobile app, Instagram, and other Facebook-related apps developed by React on React. So again, there are multiple solutions available. And again, if you're not quite sure which technology to use for your particular case, in order to save up development time and money and efforts, feel free to reach me out later on. More than happy to advise. And also where to store and run the backend, where to store the data. So there are multiple ways to do so. So you can store the data on hosting, but also you can store the data or run some scripts on platform as a service. And also you can have the own dedicated server. So there are some drawbacks and advantages of all of them. So very quick jump. So hosting, it's very affordable way to store your website, your app, to store the data, to run scripts. But it has limited resources, but it's very good point to start with. It's also, you can use the platform as a service to store your data, and it's a cloud-based service to run scripts or to store your data. It has unlimited resources. It's fully customizable. It's created for unlimited scalability, where you run some tools or products highly scalable for thousands and millions of customers. And also you can use their own dedicated servers for your tech product or service. Again, it can be complex if you don't have tech experience. It's required to maintain and support those solutions. And at the same time, it can be affordable at large scale, and it can have a powerful resources and full instant control. And a few examples before we actually are wrapping up. And I just want to give the few examples about the common mistakes of startups and the reasons why they didn't succeed. So again, one of the startups, idea was to create the LinkedIn for Snapchat generation for teenagers and the people, young people are using kind of these trendy apps in the between 10 and 20 years old. So the idea was to build a web app with basic functional, but the solution failed. The reason why, because the LinkedIn is not suitable for Snapchat generation to build on web. Those audience, they use the mobile devices. They don't use the desktops. So web app didn't work out for a desktop. So the startup didn't succeed. Another case study where Uber for urgent jobs based on geolocation. It was an iOS and Android app as an MVP, but the problem was, again, as we discussed earlier today with Adele. So it was the problem with the product market fit and value proposition. So before actually building any iOS and Android app, is extremely important to make sure that you have the needs and the customers, they understand what you're trying to do and how the app would work. and also marketplace development is very tough because you need to balance between the two audiences in the same time. So it was very tricky. And again, before the outcome of this case study is before building any iOS, Android, or web app application, please make sure you have very clear value proposition, you have very clear understanding of your target audience, and you understand that they really need your product, and you clearly understand the target group of the customers. Another startup mistake, it was a gamification platform for retail industry on German market. And initially it was developed the iOS app and web app, and it failed due to the wrong platform selection because the majority of the target customers, they used Android devices, the same as the Harry mentioned, that it's very important to understand that you have the platforms supported for the target audience you work with. So please make sure, again, you have the support of those platforms or those devices aimed to be good for your target audience. And just a kind of before summary, and I would love to connect with Adele and make a kind of the summary points and the last comments with Evgenia about first steps and tech aspects of building the product. Just to kind of the summarize, if you got any questions, feel free to reach us out at Eligent.club.com. Also, we run the multiple events and activities online and offline, so you're more than welcome to join. If you're just about to start or building your product or service, we have a special accelerator program, 6 months program for early stage tech startups. You can find out our program discussion at eligent.club/accelerator. And now, as I mentioned before, please join us on 28th of May at Eligent Accelerator Pitch Day, Investment Pitch Day, where our startups will pitch for investments. And you are more than welcome to come and connect and network with investors and meet future co-founders, future business partners, and future people to work with. Now, I would love to connect with Adel and Evgenia and give us a final summary about our session, and also final advice to our startup founders and those entrepreneurs who just about to build those products. Again, what to focus right now, especially due to the current tricky times of lockdown, how to use these particular times as most efficient as possible. And again, what is your current focus, and what would you advise to other entrepreneurs to focus right now for next couple of maybe weeks and months in order to make sure we use this particular time as most efficient as possible for R&D, and also talking to your potential customers for understanding product market fit and understanding that you're trying to build something relevant for your target audience. Any advice how to optimize your efforts right now due to the lockdown situation? If you can share the opinion to us, please, Dale and Evgenia, join us and share your final comments. So I just made you presenters. If you can check out your cameras and join us, please. So yes, if you can join us, and I just made you presenter. So if you can double check your camera and if you can connect. And yeah, we just about, and feel free to ask the first. All right, let me try one more time. And yes, feel free to ask the final questions about the product development, CTO, and I saw a few more questions. We are going to answer them.
So, well, for the lockdown time, I would say to focus on something that will last even after the lockdown. So to consider the constraints that we have today that makes something comfortable, but maybe not comfortable in the post-corona world. So I would say stay on your own things. Don't be tempted to follow the trends, everything remote, everything online. of course, the trends that we are forced to follow now. Focus on your own, on your passions, and try to understand if it's feasible today, and if it's feasible in a world that is more online than yesterday. So consider transportation, consider a lot of things that now will be slower on the physical world side, and keep going on your dreams by being sure that you consider that this is just a volatile time, and it may not be relevant maybe in a year or in 2 years.
Right, and Eugenia, what would you focus right now? More for R&D or more for reaching those particular customers? Because probably some customers are easy to reach now because everyone is online. What's the balance? What do you think is a good R&D or reaching the target group?
Well, actually, customers, customers are online, but they are overwhelmed by contacts, and at the same time, their habits have changed. So they may not be in their best time at the moment. So they may not give the best answers. So I will focus on R&D because there's time, and it's also hard to move because the economy is slowing down. So it's hard to pretend to sell something in the next few weeks. Or in general, it's harder. So I will focus on R&D because there's time to improve and even to get feedbacks. And then I will be ready for the post-Corona world in which everything will be back somehow.
Right, Evgenia, thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you tonight. We're just about to wait for Adele, and I hope that Adele can join us. Adele, if you can double check your camera, your sounds. I just made you presenter for our final comments, and yes, if you can double check your camera, your sound, and something is probably tricky a bit, and yes, but we can double check your sounds, and let me try to to connect you, and I just made you presenter, but somehow we kind of yes, Adele, if you can double check your camera and sound, and make sure again you're able to speak. I just shifted again to your connection. Maybe now the camera should be able to activate. So if you can double check, please, your camera. And yes, we are just for final discussion with Adele about the final comments. How to make this steps of product development for during the lockdown, during the coronavirus situation. How to make sure you spend this time, efficient, and you spend this time in order to make the good steps when the situation will improve and get better, and everyone will focus on the day-to-day activities as usual. So yes, if I just can double check Adele, maybe you can double. If you can try to maybe refresh your browser, maybe the refresh in the browser, Adele would help you to activate. Hopefully you can join us and you can make a final discussion. And yes, I just made you presenter again. If you can double check your camera, your sounds. Yes, and we're just waiting for Adele. And in the meantime, as I said, please join us on 28th of May 2020. The tickets on Eligent.club. It's their pitch day event for investment opportunities, early stage startups. They would pitch for investments, and also you can network with investors as well. If you're looking for funding, if you're looking for some investment partners, that would be the best date and best event to join. It's going to be a live broadcast event as well, so you can double check. It's on our website. You can check the previous pitch day in November 2019, our judge panel, and check out our other events and activities we have so far. We have more events in plans. In June, July, and August already a few events available. So please check it out. And as I mentioned before, we have Eligent Startup Weekend, 26th, 28th of June, 2020, 6 p.m. So yes, so we just hope that Adele maybe can join us. And maybe, Adele, if you can refresh the browser, it might help you to be able to join us, and it can help you to join us. And maybe you can reach the connection after you refresh the browser. So yeah, but for those who are interested to figure out, and yes, I see Adele, if you can double check your camera again, and hopefully you can join. Another big update. So also 28th of November, we have the first International Film Festival about startups. And yes, Adele, thanks for joining. We see you, but we cannot hear you yet. If you can double check the sound. And
there we go. I'm on. Whew, patience is a virtue these days. I do apologize. I had to go back and come back in again. So my final words, because I'm very cautious about time. I know we're running over, but first and foremost, I just wanted to thank you, Sliv. It was a fantastic evening, and thank you to all the participants and the great questions. But I think my little bit of advice I would like to give to everyone is, I think now is the time to really reevaluate what it really is that you want to do moving forward. I think we've been bombarded by so many distractions. We never even realized how much. And now we have the opportunity to really kind of go within, because as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, we tend to get in our own way a lot, because we kind of get to that stage where we run into bits of self-doubt, not quite sure if I should do this. What about if I don't have a job, or I have to leave my job and then don't have money? Now you can see that all of that stuff can happen in any case. Not even any corporate job is guaranteed these days. And don't be put off by the startups and the SMEs and the self-employed that's now being predominantly affected. Don't ever let that make you go, oof, maybe this is not secure for the future. Keep going, because if it's not for us, then we will eventually all end up in corporate jobs, because we have to stimulate the innovation. We have to, best case scenario when we come out of this is growth and innovation, and that will be led by people like you guys and us. And so please don't shy away. Don't let fear get to you. See this as an opportunity. Innovate, find creative ways of doing things, and you'll be pleasantly surprised that you can become your own best friend, and enjoy.
Nothing to add. Thanks a lot, Adele, for this inspirational words, and yes, a great advice to follow. And definitely, that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we highly encourage entrepreneurs and startup founders to keep doing, make this hard work, and connect us, Adele, and other invited guests and experts to follow up and have more discussions about entrepreneurship and building a tech startup now and in these current days. So thank you very much for joining us, and pleasure to have you, and hopefully to see you again. So yes, I'm finishing our session. As I said, feel free to share the LinkedIn details about you, and connect us on LinkedIn and follow up with the further events. Thank you. And
thank you for having me, Slav.
Bye. I'm finishing the session. Thank you very much. And as I said, if you get any questions, feel free to ask them later on via social media channels or LinkedIn. I'm finishing the session now. So thank you. And that's the end of the event.